Hello everyone. This is going to be a tutorial about how to make a metal lantern with the CNC plasma cutter. So what you're looking at here is a rough example of what it could look like. So you are essentially going to be making a shape that has four similar sides and a base, and you're going to make it so that it's going to cut it out in 2D, and then you're going to fold it up into 3D, and then you'll weld the corners and the edges together to form this. And when you're making it, you can choose any design that you want to have in these sort of windows sections. So you're going to decide how you're going to want to cut the metal out to make the lantern that you want. You're also going to decide how you're going to make a handle. This handle here I just included just as a bit of an example, but you can do any type of handle that you want. I'm not going to show you how to make that, and that's something that I'm going to want you guys to do and figure out on your own. It could even be integrated into the actual lantern itself. Here we go. Now we're going to use Adobe Illustrator to make our files, but really you could use any program, any graphic design program for this, as long as it's vector based. The idea is we're going to create a vector, or we're going to create a shape, and then we're going to load it into the CNC plasma software, and we're going to cut it there. The first step when we're making our file is we are going to make our artboard, the size of the space that we have to work with, match the size that the metal is going to be when we're cutting. So if we go up to File and we select Document Setup, well, we're going to make sure we're working in inches because the piece of metal that we're going to cut out of is 24 by 24 inches. So if we click on Edit Artboard, now at the top here we can determine the width and the height of our piece. So I'm going to type in 24 inches. I'm going to unlock this, so it won't keep this. It won't scale those values, and I'll have a 24 by 24 inch piece. Now, if I zoom out, I hold Alt as I zoom out with the mouse wheel. Now I can see that my piece is 24 inches by 24 inches. All right, now that I have my artboard to the right size, I'm just going to click on one of the selection tools here. So my artboard is now 24 by 24 inches. I want to create my shapes. So the first shape that I'm going to create is one of the sides of the lantern. If you remember what the lantern looks like, we're going to create one of these faces right here. Now, because it's going to be like a cardboard box that we fold up, the length of this, plus the length of this, plus the length of this, plus the length of this can't be more than 24 inches. So when we go back to Illustrator, I'm going to make my side, I'm going to make my rectangle, the side of the lantern, be 5.5 inches wide by, let's try 10.5 inches tall. So to make sure my rectangle is the right size, I'm going to go over here and click on the Transform tool, and it's going to give me a whole bunch of options. Now, I'm going to select that I want my width to be 5.5 and my height to be 10 inches tall. So I can hit Enter, and let's see how that looks. It looks pretty good. Now, when you open Illustrator, you may not see all these options on the right-hand side. The way that you get these is by clicking Window, and all of these options here are specific tool panels that you can use to add. So the ones that we are going to use in this tutorial are Image Trace, Pathfinder, and Transform. Those are going to be the really important ones. Now, because I don't want to have my lantern be solid metal on the side, the next thing I'm going to incorporate is I'm going to put in the sort of, so we call it a window in that piece. So in order to do that, I'm going to, again, grab my tool there, and I'm going to draw a piece that looks, maybe close to what I want it to look like. All right. I didn't really line that up very well, but that's okay. I know that my piece is 5.5 wide, so again, I'm going to go back to Transform here, and I want these sides to be about 1/2 inch. So let's make the width of this be 4.5, and the height I'll make Let's say I want to have maybe an inch on the top and an inch on the bottom. So the height I'm going to make 9. So there's my piece. Now they're not really aligned properly. So what I can do now is I can select all of them. And I can now use my alignment tools. So my alignment tools pop up over here. But remember again, if you don't see them, go to the window here and you can select align as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those pieces and I'm going to horizontally align them to the center, and then I'm going to align them vertically to the center. And now they're going to line up properly. If I zoom in, obviously I did some sort of math error because I wanted to have this zone be 1 inch and this zone be 1 inch and this dimension here be ½ inch. So not much of a problem. All I'm going to do is grab my tool, select this inside here, and the height, instead of 9 inches, it should be 8 inches. So I'm going to add that, and it goes right where I want it to. But the reason why it goes right where I want it to is I can tell the program where I want to anchor that shape. So I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to show you what the difference would be. Let's say if I wanted to have the top left be the anchor, if I change this to 8, the top left is going to stay in the same spot and everything else is going to change. See, now we can see that the bottom is it's coming up because this is the anchor point. And if I even change the width a little bit, let's say I want it to be 3.5, now it's going to go in that direction. So that's another kind of tip that you can use when you're resizing stuff, especially after you've aligned them. So again, I'll make the reference point in the middle, and I want to have the height be 8 inches. There we go. So now I have what is effectively 2 rectangles. And what I really want is one rectangle with this inner rectangle to be cut out of it. How do I do that? We're going to use a tool called Pathfinder. So again, if I go to my window, I can select Pathfinder right here. But before I do that, I want to highlight or change the color of these shapes so we can see what's happening when we use the Pathfinder tool. So I'll start with the back shape. I'm going to double click on the fill color here, and I'm going to change it to something. I'm just going to go into the swatches so I can just grab some things that are already made. Red. I'm going to now do the inner rectangle. Double click the fill color. Go to my swatches. Let's maybe make that one cyan. Awesome. Now here's the awesome part about the Pathfinder, is now I'm going to take these and I'm going to highlight all of them. And now if you go over to the Pathfinder, you can see there's lots of shape modes. So if I were to click on these two, it would take those 2 rectangles and combine them into be one. If I click on this mode here, it would minus the front shape. If I click on this mode, the only thing that we would keep would be the parts that are intersecting. And if I click on this one here, it's going to include the parts that aren't intersecting. So this is the one that I want. Let's click on it and see what happens. There we go. So you can see now that it popped the middle part out. So now effectively we have the window type shape that we want in the side of our lantern. This Pathfinder tool is super powerful in Illustrator, and it's one of the tools that is used really often when we're CNC plasma cutting. When we're CNC plasma cutting, though, the verbiage that they use is they often call those the weld tools. So now that I have my side made, I'm going to grab my direct select tool, and now I'm going to move this to the bottom left hand point, and I want to make 4 of them because my lantern's going to have 4 sides. So I'll hold down Alt, and you can see that the plus came right by my arrow. And now I'm going to move this over, and I'm going to hold Shift actually so that it's going to snap a little bit better and it's going to stay in line. And now when I move it over, see how those lines pop up? Now I know that they're directly lined up. And I'm going to do this 2 more times. I'll zoom out by Alt and the mouse wheel. And I can also move the canvas around by actually holding the mouse wheel down and moving around the canvas. So again, Alt, I see the plus. Hold down Shift to make sure I'm holding my shape in line. Wait to see those lines. There we go. Now I have to make the base of my lantern as well. So if you remember, our lantern was 5.5 by 5.5 inches. But if you forget that, it's okay. All we have to do is grab one of the sides, and then if I go again to my transform tool, I can see how wide the piece is. So it's 5.5 inches. So even if I forgot, I would be able to go in here and find out how wide this thing is. So when I make the base, I can type in how wide I want it to be. 5.5 by 5.5. And that'll be the right size. Now, if these two sides are chained together, that means it's going to keep its proportions. So if I try and change the width to 5.5, it's going to scale the whole piece. Now if I wanted to change the height 5.5, it's going to keep the same ratio of height of length to width. So I want to unchain these pieces and make them 5.5 by 5.5. Now I have to drag the what's going to be the bottom of my rectangle. And again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'll grab the Direct Select tool, highlight my entire part, grab the anchor part in the corner, and see those lines line up again? Now I know I'm right in the right spot of my piece. But it's kind of weird looking at it this way because I'm going to imagine that this is the way that I'm going to look at my lantern. And right now, the base of my lantern would actually be the top, which doesn't make much sense. So let me again grab my Direct Select tool, click, find the anchor, and drag it down. And remember, I can hold Shift to make sure it drags a little bit more the way I want it to go. I can see those intersecting lines. So now everything's where I want it to be. I'll grab everything. Again, grab my anchor point on the bottom, and I'll move it up to the very bottom left-hand corner of my artboard. If I hold down the mouse wheel, if I click on the mouse wheel, I can kind of move this into the center so I can see what I'm doing again. Now this is the basic shape of my lantern. Remember how it looks? It's got the 4 sides. We're going to kind of fold in those 4 sides, and then we'll fold up the bottom. So I guess the only thing really that I'm missing is if I'm doing that type of handle, maybe I want to put the handle in there. So let's do that before I'm finished doing the basic parts of the sides of the lantern, and I start adding some more decorative elements. So I'm going to make some 1/4-inch holes that I can put some 1/4-inch rod through. Now, you're going to have to make sure that we have that material in stock before you make this design decision, but I'm just going to make this right now, and I'm going to make my circle. Again, if I hold down Shift, it's going to stay a perfect circle, and I'll make it really big just so I know it's perfect, and then I'm going to change the width, again with my transform tools, to be 0.25 by 0.25. And just so I know it's something different, I'm going to zoom in by holding Alt and scroll in. I'm going to change the background color. Again, just so I know it's a little bit different than the other side of my piece. Now, if I want to drag this into place, I'll use my Direct Select tool and just kind of drag it in place. Right? And so I can find the center of this by moving it around, and Illustrator will tell me when I'm at a sort of an interesting point. Like right now, the left edge of the circle is lined up with the center of this piece, but if I move it, now the centers are lined up. So I'm going to zoom in, move this up maybe just a little bit, hold Shift to make sure that it's okay. Let's see here. There we go. I'm going to put it right there, and now I'm going to take this and move the other one over here, again by pressing Alt and Shift. Now I can move it over again, wait until the alignment points line up. That doesn't look right. Let's move it over a little bit more, holding down Shift. I think that's the center there. Awesome.